So I will introduce myself first and then I will introduce sir as well. So my name is Kopal and I am part of Zolve. So, we are helping students. We try to help students who are moving from from India to US. And this webinar series is part of that. So we have along with us Sanjay Kaushik sir. So I will not wait anymore and I will quickly introduce him. So Sanjay sir, he has a lot of experience. He has 37 plus years of experience in visa industry, and he's a former visa specialist at US Embassy at Delhi. And we have connected previous webinars with him, and we have received fantastic response. And that is the reason why we keep reaching out to him again and again for the webinars. So I hope you guys have a great session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you once again for Zolve organizing such events for students, because students have a lot of questions, and I can understand up until now the students had a lot of things in their control, like shortlisting the universities, writing their SOPs, getting their LORs right, and choosing the university. Now that they've got the I-20, and when they start the visa process, now the decision from their side goes in the hands of the visa officer. So that becomes a little uncertain. So that's the reason we are organizing these kind of events, so that we could ease out the whole process and the journey of a student and help them reach out to their goals that they are really, really willing and been working towards that. So a little brief on myself. I used to work with the US Embassy in the visa section. I've handled the non-immigrant visas, the immigrant visas. Then I was in the anti-fraud unit before I became the visa specialist. Now, for the past 22 years, I've been, after I resigned and I started my own consulting firm, I've been helping students and other visas like visitors, H1 and L1, for people wanting to go to the US. So all about 37 years of experience. So when I'm giving an answer, or when I'm suggesting something, I'm backing that up with 37 years of experience. Counseled more than probably 60,000 students and more. So my insight on finding solutions is very good. And I'm really happy that we have come together today to provide you all those insights. So let me just share my screen and start my presentation. And then once we complete the presentation, we already have about 15 questions that have been floated by the inquiries that were floated out. So I'm going to answer those, and then we'll open the floor to ask questions, right? That's the way to go?
Yeah, that is right.
All right, so let me just go ahead and share my screen.
Sure, sir.
Okay, it says that I cannot share while other participant is sharing. Okay.
Let me just check. Just wait a minute. Are you able to share now?
No, it says this will stop other screen sharing. Okay, continue. So that's fine.
That's
right. Okay, so my today's presentation is going to be about the DS-160. So let me give you a little brief on the DS-160 first. The step one is once you get your I-20, that's the time when you start filling the visa application form. The regulation earlier was that a student could not apply for a visa 120 days prior to the college start date. However, that regulation has now changed. A student can apply for a visa within 365 days, wherever. So this is a very, very good and a welcome change. And also, a very, very important announcement that if you look at the system today, the embassy has released thousands and thousands of visa appointments, whether it is for visitors and business, which were almost 2 years from now. We have started getting appointments for December and January onwards. So that's a very good news, and I'm really happy, and I've been waiting for this. And I kept announcing that, hey, don't go to any agent or anyone, because the dates would be available. So this is good news. So now I believe that whenever you get an I-20, I'm sure you'll be able to book an appointment with a lot of ease. So that stress would go out whether you'll get an appointment or not. So I'm really happy to start with. This is the news that I wanted to share. So once you get your I-20, the I-20 is coming from the university, but essentially it is coming from the Department of Homeland Security and the USCIS, which is United States Citizen and Immigration Services. So once you get the I-20, make sure that all your details on your I-20 are correct. Your name, your date of birth, your place of birth, the course that you're going there for, the duration. Once you get that, you have to start filling a visa form called DS-160. So DS stands for Department of State. So make sure when you start filling your DS-160, you have your passport and your I-20. Your passport should be valid for 6 months from the day you enter the US. There's a lot of misconception or a myth saying that your passport should be valid until you complete your program and then it should be 6 months. That's not true, because if your passport expires while you're in the US, you can go to the nearest Indian embassy and get your passport renewed. So technically, your passport should be valid for 6 months from your day you enter the US. If your program is starting in January, so your passport should be valid until July of 2024 at least, or beyond that. So step 1, you have to log on to the ustraveldocs.com and click on the non-immigrant visa link, and then you'll get a link which says DS-160. So once you click on the DS-160, you'll get the application ID. So note down your application ID and click on Start Your Application. So once you start your application, it'll ask you for your surname and your given name. So now the surname would be mentioned on your passport, and your given name as your given name mentioned on your passport. So it should go according to the passport. So the most important thing now, because a lot of people has a lot of confusion saying that my education documents have a different name. For example, there's an abbreviation. However, on my passport, I have a different name which has been expanded. So what should I fill? Whatever you're filling now should be in sync with your passport. Okay, that's really important. Now, also sometimes what happens is that a person has a complete name which has been mentioned in the given name and the surname field is blank. So what you do is you shift your complete name in your surname field and your given name would be FNU. That's the way the regulation is being stipulated by the US government, saying that if you do not have a surname on your passport, make sure that your given name is mentioned on your surname field and your given name is mentioned on now as an FNU in your given name. That's the way it has to go. Now your date of birth should match the I-20 and your passport. The entire visa process and the visa form is crucial to be in sync with your passport, your I-20 and the DS-160. So whatever details are mentioned on your passports are really important. So your place of birth, your country of birth should be mentioned according to the passport. Now, national identification number. There's a question which comes on the DS-160. What's your national identification number? Either you can click on does not apply, or you can mention your Aadhaar card, whatever you have. Social security number. If this is your first visit to the US, then mention do not apply, does not apply. Let's say somebody was already in the US on an F1 or on an H1, and if this question comes in, they would have a social security number. So mention your social security number for sure. The next question, which is US taxpayer ID number, that should also be mentioned if you're already in the US on an H1 or an L1 and now you're applying for an F1 visa. But if this is your first visa ever to the US, like a visitor's visa you had, that's a separate story. But if you had an H1, L1, then you can mention the social security number and your US taxpayer number. Otherwise, click on does not apply. Now, there's also a lot of confusion about the home address. Sometimes your home address that is mentioned on your passport and where you're physically living could be two different addresses. So make sure that you're mentioning the address where you physically live, not what your passport says, unless you are living there physically. For example, if a person is from Chennai but studying in Jaipur, and while he was studying in Jaipur, he got a passport made which has his postal number, address. And now when he's applying for his visa, he's now in Chennai. So what address he has to mention? The Chennai address where you're physically living. Similarly, if a person is from Jaipur living in Bangalore and now he's in Jaipur, then he has to mention his Jaipur address or his Delhi address, where you physically live, which could be different. Okay? It doesn't have to be the passport number unless you're physically living there. Passport details. So we have different kind of passports. Largely, students, visitors would have a passport type as regular. All right. Now, passport number and passport book number, these are two different questions. So passport number is already mentioned on your passport. For India, passport book number does not apply. There are a lot of other countries where they have a passport number and a passport book number as well. But for India, there's only a passport number. So book number does not apply. So unless a person has a diplomatic or an official passport, you can choose that while applying for a visa, which is actually not allowed if you're a diplomat. Then if you're traveling for your education, you have to have a regular passport because the options are given there. So a lot of students get confused at what should I mention. So your passport should be blue and it would say regular. So mention regular passport type. So now your purpose of trip, because you're going in there for your education. So there are three options because student visas has three options: M1, F1, and J1. So your purpose of trip at this point of time is academic or language training. So choose F1. And then again, it asks you to specify the visa classification, which has to be a F1. Now, so once you also move forward, it asks you a question whether you have any specific travel arrangements or no. You can mention yes if you've already booked your tickets. It'll ask you for a travel date, your complete itinerary, your start and your end date as well. When are you returning? Okay, so you have to, if you've booked your tickets, only then mention yes. Otherwise, it is absolutely good to mention no. Once you mention no, it'll ask you for when do you intend to arrive in the US. So that's like a ballpark date, which should be within 30 days of your program start date. Okay, not before that. For example, if your program is starting on December 1st, so you can mention any date after November 1st, not October. All right. It has to be within 30 days of your school start date, not before that. Length of stay in the US. It should be mentioned according to your I-20. Sometimes what happens is that if you're going in for a master's program, the I-20 may be issued for a lesser duration, let's say 15 months, or it could be 2.5 years, right? So just mention whatever is mentioned on your I-20. All right. If it's mentioned 3 years, if you mention 2 years, it's okay because that shows your intention that you want to complete your program within 2 years. Address where you'll stay in the US. Most of the students may not have booked their apartments yet. So you can simply mention your school address. That's fine to go. And then also it also asks you that the name and address of the person, your contact person in the US. So you would have received correspondence from your university saying that, this is the person, your point of contact. You should mention the person's name and telephone number. If you have not received any correspondence or communication from your university, then you can mention the address where you will stay as your college address. The person who signed your I-20, you can mention the point of contact as that person. The contact details, you can go onto the school website and look for the contact details over there. A regular email address of the school is also fine. And also the contact number of the university is fine. Otherwise, ask your school specifically if you could mention the person who signed the I-20 as a point of contact in the US, or they'll give you the required information to be mentioned on the DS-160 or point of contact in the US. Also, if you have a relative in the US, the question is, should I mention the address where I'll stay of my relative? The answer is no. It is because you're going for your studies, and if the USCIS or the DHS wants to find out about your whereabouts or your progress, so your point of contact should be the university. Always, when you're going for your studies, it is important that you mention your address where you will stay. Either you've booked an apartment or the university. That's it. Now, the person, entity paying for your trip. There's also a lot of confusion and myth over here that, when I sent my documents for my I-20, I used a bank education loan or papers from my mom. Now, when I'm applying for my visa, what do? You can, even if you've taken the loan and you've sent those loan documents, but when you're filling the visa application form, it is important that you mention the name of your father or your parents here. It'll give you the option to choose other. And when you scroll down, it'll say like, what's your relationship with the person? You can say parents, mention your father's name. The reason I'm saying this is, if you look at the US visa law, it says you have to show your social ties, your financial ties, and your professional goals. So when I'm mentioning my parents on my DS-160, I'm not only showing my social ties, but also my financial ties to my home country. How do you answer what documents you have to carry? We'll cover that in the later part. All right. But when you're filling the visa application form, it is important that you mention the name of your parents. Like I mentioned in my last conversation, contact person in the US should be mentioned, the person who signed your I-20, or you should get a clear communication from the university asking them who should you mention. All right. So relationship to you would be your school official. Will give you the option, right? And the school address and the telephone number, you can get it from the school's website, or you can ask them, or if you received any email, that email would have those details. All right. So it is important, even if you have a relative there, on the form, there's a question, do you have any relative? You've got to say yes. But when it says your point of contact, it should be the university. All right. So there's a difference. I'll explain you that as well. Now, if you're a student, now it also asks you a question about your primary occupation. So if you're a student, if you're currently enrolled in a program, then you're a student. But if you've already completed your studies, then you're not a student. Then you'll mention not employed. It will asking you current occupation. All right. Now, if you're working, then you'll say working. If you have resigned and if you're not going to work and you're just waiting for your application, again, you'll mention not employed, and then you have to give an explanation that what are you doing. For example, when you were in your class 12 and you completed your studies in May or June, but you could not get an appointment, or you could not go to the US, or you received your I-20 a little later, and now you're applying for the spring session. So your explanation after choosing not employed would be that, I completed my class 12 in the month of June, and I've been working on my visa application and my study abroad. Now that I've got my I-20, I'm now currently working on my visa application. Similarly, if you have resigned, then you would say that I was working for this company. Once I heard from the university and once I got my application, I had to put in my papers so that I could start working on my student visa application. All right. So that's how you do it. You can't say that you're currently working because you've already worked. You're not a student because you're in between. You've completed your studies and you're waiting to get your visa and go. So in between, if there's a blank, if you've not been doing anything, choose not employed. Or if you're currently student, then mention student. Okay. All right. Additional point of contact. Now, when you're completing your visa application form, there are various stages. These are the key points, the frequently asked question that I'm addressing, because otherwise you have to mention your name, your date of birth, your passport details, your home address, all those things which are fairly easy. These are the kind of questions which I've encountered that students would ask me repeatedly. So I've created this presentation so that when you're filling your DS-160, when you get to these questions, you have these answers. So it says additional point of contact, and it says very clearly, except your relatives. Still, the students would call me and ask me, what should I fill here? You can mention your friends, your family friends, your schoolmates, your classmates, your colleagues, your neighbors. All right. It should not be your relative, even your distant relative. All right. This is the point of contact for their reference. Also, a lot of students ask me that, whether they would be called, should we brief them? I mean, there are like 900 people applying for a visa every day. So not the university, but the visa officers will not be sitting down and calling them. It is just in case if they doubt something, or if they have any emergency that they want somebody else to be contacted for. So that's for their reference. Okay. So it's not that, somebody is calling them to find out about your background. Right. So here I would end my presentation. And so we'll be also talking about the questions that we received online from the students. However, I like to ask Kopal to give a little presentation on the Zolve, because what I believe is, there are two parts, major parts. One is getting your I-20 and getting your visa. For that, we are helping you. But what do you do once you are in the US? So Zolve has started solving those problems from here right now by providing those details. Gopal would be in a better position to provide those details. So thank you so much, and we'll take on from here, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So yeah, I'll give a little bit of introduction of Zolve, and post that we will take all the questions which we have received on the Google form, or we have received in the Q&A panel. So let me just quickly share my screen. Second. All right. I hope you guys can see my screen. So I'll just give a quick introduction of Zolve. So Zolve is a cross-border neobank. We are based out of US and we're headquartered in New York. We help students in the seamless transition from India to US. So every year, around 100K students grow from India to US, and we help in their smoother transition from India to US because the things in India and the things how they work in US are completely different. So we really help them in transition. We have 100K plus active users as of now, and we are growing day by day. I just want to introduce a couple of products which we provide. So we provide US bank account, US credit card, US money, US to India money transfer, India to US money transfer. And apart from that, we also provide under Zolve Edge, we provide visa assistance services. We provide education loans. We provide Forex cards. We provide scholarships for students. We are going to launch our scholarships soon on first week of November, which will be specifically focused towards spring students. And we also provide US SIM card. So a couple of minutes I'll spend on this Zolve Edge portal. So under visa assistance, we provide various services. For example, these visa webinars, which we are currently having. This is part of the visa assistance services which we provide. We also provide visa slot alerts. We also provide in case the slot is available, we also provide DS-160 form reviews or any help which we need in visa. The other thing which we provide is education loans. So you can check out our platform. We do have tie-ups with education loan providers. We also provide Forex card. And as I mentioned earlier, we have scholarships which are going to launch in the first week of November. So do check that out. So that is a very quick introduction of Zolve. On the next slide, I have the link to sign up to Zolve. You can get all of these services and access to all of these services once you sign up to Zolve. You can use this link to sign up, and this is the code which you can use as the referral code to access these services. We also have a WhatsApp group where you can post all your queries. So do join this WhatsApp group. And in case you have any suggestions or any feedback on this webinar, do post there. And once you sign up, you will also be able to access all the webinar recordings. You will be able to access the scholarships and all that which I mentioned, right? So apart from this, I would also like to mention that we have launched special premium services, the visa services by Sanjay Kaushik sir, who is our speaker and a very known expert in the visa industry. So in case you are interested in that, do fill the feedback form. In the feedback form, there is an option of availing which service do you want to have, completely visa help service or just the visa interview prep service, and we'll be able to provide that. Our team will reach out to you. So without further ado, I will just share the links on the chat. Just give me 1 second. Yep, I have shared the links. I would strongly suggest, I will just wait for a few minutes. I will strongly suggest everybody to sign up and get access to the recordings. In case you have any questions or you want to look back to these recordings, you can definitely do that. And you can avail all the services there. You can access the scholarship also from there. So do check it out. And I'll just give a 2-minute break. And I think we are receiving a couple of questions. So just let me take that. Yeah, so somebody has asked the link. I have circulated the link in the chat box. In case you guys have any feedback or any suggestions or any topic suggestions, you know, what we should do in the next webinars. So we will be hosting these webinars on every Saturday, and we will think about increasing the frequency also in case you want it. So please do provide the feedback so that we can modify our webinar pattern accordingly. And in case you have any questions which you really want sir to answer, do mention that in the chat box or in the feedback form. Let's just wait for a couple of minutes. I guess we have started receiving a lot of questions. We have around 20 more questions which we need to answer apart from the Google form questions. So I will.
So can I have these questions with me? Can I just read the question and give the answers, the one that we've received already, and then we can move on to this one? Is that fine?
That is perfect.
Great. Okay, so we have received the questions which says that how to prove that I'm going on a sabbatical leave and how to frame the answer. Well, if somebody is going on a sabbatical, that's a very good thing, and it should obviously be put in forth to the visa officer when he's asking a question. For example, if the officer says, why do you want to go to the question? That's usually the first question the officer might ask. So the answer would be, sir, that I've been working, for example, let's say for TCS for 3 years. And when I showed my intent to go and do my master's and specialize in cybersecurity, for example, my office was really happy. In fact, they've given me a sabbatical. So this gives me an option to complete my master's, come back and join at a higher grade once I return back to my home country, right? So sabbatical should be used very smartly. For example, if the officer says, what are your future plans, right? And if not been able to give this sabbatical at any point of time, and the officer says, what are your future plans or how will this education help you? So you would say that so the technology is really growing and people and the companies are now switching on from, from this platform to another platform. And my future plan is to go improve on my skill set and come back and work with the same company because I've been offered a sabbatical. So the whole idea of using sabbatical is that you're showing your intention of returning back to your home country. So you're instantly overcoming the presumption that you're a potential immigrant. So it's very important that if you have this opportunity or a sabbatical opportunity, you must go and talk to your HR and possibly get a sabbatical, because instantly you're putting your intention of returning back to your home country to the visa officer, which makes your case much easier to adjudicate and a stronger reason for you to come back. So I hope that I've answered this question. Now there's another question which says, I've got an I-20 from a university information system and I request to change my course to cybersecurity and computer science, and my request for the course got changed, but I have yet to receive my I-20 and I have my upcoming interview. So that's fine, because when you're going for your interview at this point of time, use the correct I-20 and whatever program is mentioned there. And once your visa is approved, then you can use the other I-20 to travel to the US, because if you're going to the same university and in the same IT field, they would usually not change your service number. So that's absolutely fine. Once your visa is approved, you can use the same visa and the new I-20 to enter the US. It is not that you have to do anything extra for that. The other question is, I'm changing my stream from civil engineering to information technology. Are there any challenges or visa rejection chances? The answer is no, because you all have to understand that when you're let's say that you're a civil engineer but now going in for information technology, so you're not actually changing your field technically, but you are now also improving or getting more skill sets. So use that as a skill set inclusion in your profile and your repertoire, so that once you come back, you can have better skill sets for developing a software, let's say for L&T or for Tata projects, right? Or for GMR or for Gammon, saying that these are all companies which would require people to work on the softwares, information technology with my expertise, because India is fast growing and a lot of urbanization is happening, a lot of international construction companies are here. So having a background in civil engineering with IT would give me a opportunity to work on the IT side as well, where I can make a lot of decisions based on the technology. So use that as a skill set improvement, additional of skill set. Okay. Do not go and mention that you're changing your field. Do not, because it can be used at any point of time. You can also come back and work with PwC, for mergers and acquisitions, saying that, I want to work on the technology aspect. So better skill sets, more skill sets is really important that you can project. Now, the other question is, I have a 1-year experience and 1-year gap. I tried to switch to entirely a different career. I decided to cancel my plans and do an MS in the US. How do I explain? You would say that during this time, you were researching your options. You had the opportunity to also take this plunge and look at the various options. And also, if you have done some certification programs, do mention that, right? And then say, when I compared the course content and curriculum, I decided that US would be a better option for me because I'll get the international exposure and the kind of skill set and the experience that I've got, which had made me a clear decision that which field I need to choose. So if you feel that, there's a gap, you can use that gap as your strength. Understand that you were doing your research, and most of the Western countries, also appreciate the gap years also. That, you took a decision, you did your research, you looked at various options and then collected that information. And then now that you're ready for your further education, so use that as in your favor, rather than saying that, oh, I had a gap. So that's not a gap. You can say that, you took those kind of informed decisions to figure out what are the career options and objectives that you eventually want to gain in your career. Okay, so now the another question is that why visa officers like he or she is not listening to my answer and not maintaining eye contact. I heard VOs do not do this intentionally. So let's understand, the visa officers are more interested in listening to your concept of studying abroad, right? Why do you want to go and study in America? And what are your career objectives? Have you done some research? What are your reasons of studying in the US, rather than looking at you? So it's not a deliberate kind of thing, but they want to hear your answers. And when they're looking at the screen, they're doing their work because they've got a lot of other things to also take care of while taking your interview. Looking at your DS-160, correct? That's also a very major part because most of your questions are going to be coming from the DS-160. So they're looking at your DS-160, they're asking questions, they're listening to your answers to make an informed decision. So even if the officer is not looking at you, make sure that you're giving your answers absolutely correct. Do not feel or do not stress out that this person is not looking at me, or is he listening to my answers? Yes, they are listening to your answers. So make sure that your answers are absolutely correct. Okay. All right. Now it says, the another question is, what should I fill in DS-160? Briefly describe your duties. If I fill my duties on my DS-160, if the visa officer is asking me questions about my role and responsibilities, what should I tell? Well, whatever you are filling on your DS-160, you have to be in sync with that. It's not that, you're talking about something else that you fill on your DS-160 and what you're saying. So make sure that you fill your DS-160 and you have to be brief while explaining your job roles over there and job responsibilities. Make key points. Make key points of what you're doing and which are also in sync with what you'll go and study. So if you can connect these things together, your answer would become even better. All right. Now, the other question is that my sister went to do a master's in the fall intake and now I'm planning for a spring intake. Will affect my visa? The answer is no, because you both have your own journey. Your sister went because she wanted to go and study because she has got her own career goals and career objectives. And that's the reason she wanted to go and study in the US. And because now that you are ready to go and study in the US, you have your own goals. You have your own career objectives. You want to, progress in your career. So focus on yourself rather than, thinking about your sister in the US. So focus on your reasons of going, your reason to go and study in the US. Your reason should not be that, your sister is there, that's the reason you want to go and study in the US. That should not be your reason. Your reason should be your reason of going and studying in the US, right? So look at your career first, look at the skill sets, look at the choice of university, and then create your journey, right? So it becomes very easy for a person to qualify for a visa, even if they have their siblings in the US, even if they're in the same university. But if you focus on yourself, if you focus on your own answers and your own journey, it'll become much easier. The other question is, how much amount? Well, that's a good question, because a lot of people ask this question. How much amount should I have in my bank with respect to the amount that is listed in the I-20? Should it be double or exact, or 1.5, or for 2 years? This is a huge myth. Please understand that nobody would keep that kind of money in a saving account. The officer's objective is not to see your balance or the availability of funds. Again, understand the visa law. The law says that the student must show their social ties and financial ties. What does financial ties mean? The financial ties would mean that, is your family in India financially strong? Do they have annual income? Do they have savings, investments? Do they own properties? So they're looking at that holistically, not just the savings or the amount which is either the double or for 2 years. They're looking at the most, you can have the 1 year of expense, at your disposal, but they're looking at the overall situation of the family. So it's not that you should have the entire amount sitting in your saving account or the double or for 2 years. I hope you understand that, you're looking at how you spread out your funds, your savings, your investments, your provident fund, all of that, So and whenever you're going in for your visa interview, if you mention your father as your sponsor on your DS-160 and your I-20, however, when you go for the interview, you can carry financial papers of your mother as well, yourself as well, and your siblings, because it's the family that they're looking at, not just the person who's sponsoring. The sponsoring has a very different connotation, right? Over here, they're looking at financial strength of the family, okay? The other question is is Duolingo accepted for visa process? Yes, it is. It's an English test, whether it's IELTS or TOEFL. Duolingo is also accepted. I've done a job after my graduation. Do I carry work experience certificates for the visa interview? The answer is yes. That is only that, if you've done multiple jobs, then you need to carry the relieving letter and your current job letter and your salary slips. All right. If this is your first job, then just your joining letter and your salary slips are good enough. All right. Now, if I'll be joining a university in spring for PhD program, if I receive an offer from another university for the fall of 24, can I manage to change the university? What is the process? Largely, if you're going for a PhD to a university and you've gotten your visa, but now that you've got a better university for a fall, well, the current regulation says that you don't have to get your visa re-stamped. But however, I keep suggesting everyone that once you get your visa stamped, and if you don't travel, and if you want to travel in the next session, and if you're going to a better university or a different university, if you get an I-20, make sure that you write an email to the embassy explaining your situation, that you've got a visa approved, but you could not travel. Now that you are ready to travel and your visa is valid for the next 5 years, and you've got an I-20 from another university, so please suggest. Usually they'll come back to you saying that you can use the same visa with the new I-20. You just have to get the service transfer. It's a process, there's nothing else. It is, you have to go on to the fmjfe.com through which you paid your service fees and get it transferred. It's as simple as that. But make sure that you write to the embassy and inform them. The other question is the same question. My brother went to the US in 2003 intake to do his master's, and now for the spring intake, I'm going to the same university. Like I mentioned earlier, focus on your journey. And also, it's very important that do your research. Look at various colleges, all right? Not just one college, unless it is a Harvard or a CMU or a Yale or Princeton, unless there are top universities, that's fine. But most of the time, I always suggest, do your research, look at various colleges, apply to at least 3, 4, 5 universities. However, if you've chosen the same university, the choice of the university should not be that my brother's there. The choice of the university should be the course content, the curriculum. How will it help you in improving your skill sets? Those are the key points. So make sure that you do that. All right. Okay, Kopal, we can take the other questions from here now.
Sure, sir. We have received a lot of questions, so we will try to take as many as we can.
Sure.
So I think the first question is by Priyanka Poshala. She's asked that I have an issue about DS-160. I'm trying to retrieve my application, but she's not able to. So she wants guidance on that.
All right. So, Priyanka, if you're not able to retrieve your DS-160, what I also assume is that maybe you've already created your profile and paid the visa application fees, and on your profile you've mentioned the DS-160 number. So your question is, what do I do now if you're not able to retrieve it? Go ahead and fill a new DS-160. All right. And you now, because there is no option of editing your CGI profile. So do not worry, because the embassy understands this. When you go in for your fingerprinting over there, they'll change your DS-160 number on your CGI profile as well. So feel free to fill a new DS-160. You do not have to pay the fees again. You don't have to. You will not be losing your appointment at all. Just go ahead and fill a new DS-160. Thank you.
Okay, great. The next question is from Sasida Reddy Kotapati. He has asked that he has a gap year in his resume and he's trying to find the opportunities. So is it safe to explain the gap year, or should he fake it?
Okay, I would strongly recommend everyone that you should avoid faking anything. Don't do that. Stick to the basics, because like I said in my last presentation, and also in this presentation, I'll reiterate myself. Once you fill your DS-160, it stays in the system for 99 years. All right. So whatever you mention in your DS-160, it should be absolutely correct and authentic. All right. So how do you explain it? Like I said, I guess I had explained this question earlier also, that if you have a gap year, you can always mention that you were looking at options here. You were also looking at, getting into Indian, IITs, you were looking at the ISBs, you were looking at various programs. And then eventually, after doing a lot of research, you realize that, international education would really help you. So this can be actually, like I said earlier also, anything that you believe is a negative can be turned into a positive the way you answer it. So please, whatever is there, be authentic and provide relevant and exact authentic information on your DS-160. Thanks.
Perfect. The next question is from Sanhit Reddy. He mentioned that, can you explain what should be there in the duties sections of DS-160? He recently graduated in August 2023. So should I mention that what I have done in college or what I did till August? I mean, I think he wants to understand what exactly should be there in the duty section.
Right. Okay. So when you say that you, so there are two questions. One is, what are you currently doing? According to what the information that I have is that you've graduated, you're currently not doing anything. So you have to choose not employed. All right. And then it says explain. So over there you can explain that after my graduation, I started working on my student visa study abroad application and currently working on my visa application. So you can just mention that. But if you're currently studying, right, and then it says briefly describe your duties. Over there, you just have to explain what are you studying and what all you studied up until now. If you've already graduated and not doing anything, mention not employed, and just mention that you've completed your graduation and now currently working on your study abroad visa application. That's the only thing that you have to explain if you're currently not working. Thanks.
Got it. Next question is from Saloni R. She has also raised her hands a couple of times. So Saloni's question is that I have 2 years of work experience, but in a small scale company where I did not receive the salary in the bank statement, I received in cash. So would that pose a visa rejection situation? And if yes, then how do I address it?
Okay. So the first thing is it's not that every company or any organization or all the organizations in India provide you salary slips, right? So there are a lot of organizations, small, large, big, they would possibly give you either cash or maybe transfer that money into your bank. That's not an issue. It's not that, you should have a bank certificate or you should have a salary slip. As long as you can show an employment letter, that's good enough. Absolutely good enough. So nothing to worry about that at all. There are hundreds and thousands of students in a similar situation going in for the visa interview, right? It is not mandatory to have salary slips or that the money should be coming in the bank. If you have a verifiable, authentic employment letter, that's good enough for you to go. Thanks.
Got it. All right. I hope, Saloni, this answers your question. The next question is from Vani. She has mentioned that I am applying for fresh F1 in India. I already have H4. What documents I need for my spouse, although my whole education is sponsored by my father? Please advise.
All right. Okay, very good, very good. Because a lot of people are H4 to F1 are applying for the visa, and that's the right way of doing it. Even if you remember in our last presentation, we had a similar question. So, Saloni, when you're applying for a visa, it is important that not only you show financial strength and financial documents from your parents in India, but also to show documents coming from the US. You know, for example, your husband's current salary slips, which are either the W2s or the 1040s, the salary slip, and also his employment letter and a copy of his passport. Two things here. H4 is you are in a very good position to qualify for an F1. The only thing that you have to show is a continuing relationship and that your husband is still working. So that's one part. Financial documents from your family shows financial strength in India. So carry documents both from India and US. Thank you.
Got it. All right. Sanhit has posted another question. He's saying that he is from a private college, but it is affiliated to JNTU Hyderabad. So, and all the transcripts and the certificates mention JNTU Hyderabad letterpad, right? So, should he mention JNTU Hyderabad as a college, or should he mention his college name as the in the education section?
Okay, so there are two things. Like, you know, once when you get a degree, you'll be getting a degree from the university. However, you are attending a university when you're going physically, you're going to JNTU, right? And your mark sheets are from JNTU, right? So mention JNTU, the where you're going physically for your studies. Yeah.
Perfect. I hope, Sunny, this answers your question. I think was that, yeah, one person, Sai K, has asked that my OFC appointment is scheduled in Chennai consulate and consular appointment is in Hyderabad consulate. Which location should I choose for designated location in DS-160 form?
Consular appointment, Hyderabad.
Okay.
Thanks.
I hope, Saike, this answers your question. Elaborate on DS-160 expiration. How does this work?
Okay. All right. So yeah, this is also a question which is also floating. Is like, you know, okay. So when you start filling your DS-160, and if you do not submit your DS-160, it is only valid for 30 days, right? So if you submit your DS-160, once you complete your DS-160 and you submit your DS-160, and then you cannot make any changes, it stays in the system for 99 years. You can retrieve it, and each time when you retrieve it, previous information would be there, but with a new application ID number. So technically, if you start your DS-160 and if you do not submit, it is valid only for 30 days, right? If you do not complete your DS-160 within 30 days, and if you do not submit, that expires, right? Then you have to fill a new DS-160, all right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So one person has asked, I think a lot of people have this question. Nikhila has asked this question, that if we hold two I-20s and if we do not mention that to the visa officer, will they come to know regarding the two I-20s?
Okay, so Nikhila, the first thing is like, you know, having multiple I-20s is always a good idea. Like if you remember, I just spoke about the person who was going to the US whose brother is already there, right? I said, look at your options, you know. So I have certain dialogue which says there are two kinds of students applying for visas. One, those who want to go to the US, and one, those who want to go and study in the US. There's a difference. The person who wants to go and study in the US would have done a research. He would have looked at various colleges. He would have applied to multiple colleges. And then once he receives an admit from all those universities, only then you're in a position to choose the best, right? So having multiple I-20s, great idea, right? So your next question is, will they get to know? If the officer wants to know the number of I-20s you've got, yes, he can find out, but they're not concerned about that. You know, they're more focused on taking your interview rather than finding out how many universities you apply to and going and searching in their database, right? So having multiple I-20s, great idea. And you must tell that to the officer going for the interview, saying that, you know, why have you chosen this university? So based on my profile, I did my research. In fact, I applied to 7 universities. I got 4 admit. Out of those 4, I've chosen this. That's the best way of, you know, giving an answer, because that shows your intentions to go and study there, right?
Oh,
thanks.
Yeah, I think this is a great suggestion, right? I think a lot of people are confused whether they should showcase this to the visa officer or not. But
Right.
I hope this answers their question. A lot of questions on my own sibling is in US or my close relatives are in US. Should we mention that same in the DS-160 or not?
So let me answer this question. Very good. All right. So look, if you have a sibling there, right, it is very important that you mention, first of all, always remember to mention absolute correct information on your DS-160. Now, a lot of students ask me this, and a lot of agents and a lot of people say that if you have a relative in the US, your chances of getting a visa minimizes. That's not true. This is absolutely a huge myth. As long as the officer is able to understand your reason of going and studying in America, right? You should have a very, very valid reason to go and study in America, because your career goals are important. What are your career goals? What are the kind of skill sets that you're looking at? How will this education help you are really important, not just going to the US or applying for a visa. All right. The other thing is I always tell in a very, very lighter manner, saying that the American embassy is also using computers, right? So when your sibling filled his application, he would have mentioned the name of his parents and their date of birth. When you are applying for your visa, you would also mention the name and date of birth of your parents. What is the use of having a computer? Is to match the data. And somebody asked me, when the officer is not looking at me and is listening to answers, what is he doing? This is exactly what he's doing, because the system is showing a lot of data to him, right? Has somebody provided the correct information or not? All right. So make sure that you provide that information on your DS-160, which should be absolutely authentic, 100%. If you have a relative in the US, that makes no difference. That was his journey. That was his way of going to the US. Right now it is. Similarly, if you have an uncle or aunt, right? And there are two questions. Do you have any immediate relative? Immediate would only mean your parents, your siblings, your spouse, your kids. So do you have any immediate relative? If you do not have any of these, you would say no. And there's another question which says, do you have any other relative? If you have your uncle, let's say Masi, Bua, Chacha, Tau, then you say yes, right? Now, also remember that I also mentioned point of contact. So if you have a relative there, should I mention my relative address as my point of contact? No, your university. So now you understand when I was saying that when you fill your DS-160, on your point of contact, this is what you need to mention. Relative, immediate relative, yes. If you have, immediate relative. If you do not have, mention no. Other relative, mention yes. It makes no difference. Trust me, your answers have to be absolutely perfect. Thank you.
Got it. I hope Ashish Chinna, this answers your question as well, because he had mentioned that he has a sister who is a citizen in US and he'll be staying at her place for studying. So I hope this answers his question as well. Okay. Next question is from one person who has asked that how to change Civis ID in visa confirmation portal. Is this enough to change in DS-160 form, or do we need change both?
No. I mean, if DS-160 is good enough, because on the CGI portal, it does not give you the option to change, the passport number, your name, your date of birth, and your service details. That's fine. Just fill your DS-160 according to the I-20. So that's fine.
Got it.
Yeah.
Couple of people in the Q&A section have mentioned that they have received 2 tourist visa refusals from Canada in 2019, or some person has been refused 8 times. So should he just apply for the 9th time in US, or should he choose some other country only for studies?
Well, I would suggest, I was just talking to one of the students in the morning. He said that I got my visa refused 4 times. What do I do? Should I apply or not? So my answer is the American embassy will not come to you and say that take your visa, right? We have to apply, right? So I guess you're making some kind of fundamental mistake. And if you could, come one-on-one, then I'll be more than happy to listen to your case and then suggest what needs to be done. And I've seen in my own career that, students have been refused 5, 6, 7 times, and 8th time also they've gotten the visas. So don't give up, I mean, if that's what you want, and if you have your goals really set up and you understand what are the kind of skill sets that you want and that will really improve you, then I guess you should give one more chance. Why not? Maybe this could be your chance.
Yeah, I would strongly suggest that fill the feedback form. And in case you want personalized service help from Sanjay sir, please fill the feedback form and our team will reach out to you. Another question is from Dinesh Babu Gurram. He has asked that I have discontinued my master's from UK due to personal issues. So is there any chance of getting a visa rejection?
Chance? No, like I said, I keep telling everyone, make sure that when you're choosing a university, these rejection or coming midway, leaving your education for certain circumstances should not it should not be bothering you at all. What you need to focus now is like, where is your career going from here to what's your next level. So focus once again on the choice of university, the choice of program that you want to go, and how you can leverage your UK experience to your US experience and your career. Like I said, anything which you believe is negative can be used as positive. So once again, I need to know the specifics to advise you and frame an answer for you, which becomes even stronger, which can be your strength eventually. Trust me, I've seen those kind of cases. So don't back off. You can apply and you have a good chance.
Got it.
Thanks.
Atish Karmore, I'm sorry for the pronunciation, has posted that, can you please tell how many days early I can go for F1 visa interview for my program start date?
Well, like I mentioned now that, earlier the regulation was that a student can only apply within 120 days. Now it's 365 days. So if your program, let's say, starting in September 2024, you can still go for your visa interview now, right? But you can only enter the US within 30 days of your program start date. Thanks.
So, sir, you mentioned something about DS-160 expiration date. Is it
Right.
30 days from the start date, or how is it calculated?
Yeah, it is calculated 30 days from your start date of your application. However, on the 20th day, if you make some changes, open and retrieve it and make changes, it extends. But I would say that, don't try the system. Just go ahead and fill your visa form. 30 days are good enough for you to make a decision and then submit your form. If by chance, if you're not able to complete your form, then you can fill a new form. That's okay. Like I said, I've been saying that, you can fill multiple forms. Carry the most latest and the most recent one when you go in for the visa interview.
Got it. We do have a couple of questions where people have asked that, I have been refused before, because so how should I answer this question? I was refused for Gannon University, and this time I'm applying for a different university. So will visa interview ask that, visa officer ask that? How do I answer that question in the best scenario?
Sure. Look, the first thing is like, a lot of people, they call and ask like, whether should I go for my visa interview in Chennai or in Hyderabad, the success rate over there is good, Mumbai is good, or Delhi is good. There's nothing like this. So first thing is first, that the visa officers are trained in Washington, right? They're not trained in Washington for Chennai or for Hyderabad, all right? Now, when you're going for the visa interview, like I said, it is always very important to understand your journey. Why have you chosen this university? Why have you chosen this program? How will you fund yourself, right? What are your career objectives? The law says that each student must show that he is a legitimate student going to study in the US and stronger reasons to come back. So that's one. The second is, do not try and go to various other locations. If your visa gets refused in Chennai, then try Mumbai, and then if not Mumbai, then go to Delhi, and then keep changing your I-20s. No, please don't do that. Avoid doing that. If you're refused from Chennai, if you're a resident of Chennai, go back to Chennai and apply for a visa there. It's not that your chances would reduce if you go and apply for a visa in the same conscript. All right. So that's one. The second question is that, if your visa has been refused 3 or 4 times, and now that you're going for the 5th time to a different university, make sure that this university is better ranked than the first 2 universities that you've applied to. If it's a similar university or a lower rank university, then there's no point in applying. Also, be sure of what you want to do in your career. Your career objectives and your visa, your course of study should be in sync. It's really important. I mean, we'll be also arranging another webinar only for visa interview, how to crack the visa interview, right? So I would suggest and recommend that, please do join that, because that would also give you an insight on what does each question mean. How do I frame those answers? What does this question mean? Why do you want to go to the US? On the face of it, it looks very simple, but it is very technical. I'll explain every question in detail when we do the webinar for visa interviews and how to crack the visa interview.
Yeah.
And like, once again, if your visa has been refused once or twice or thrice or 4 times, and if your program is good, if you understand that, that you really want to go and study in the US and this would really help me, I don't think so you should back off. You should take proper guidance. I would rather say that.
That's right. Visa interviews and DS-160, these are very important parts of the whole process of the going abroad journey, right? So people should not definitely risk it. And we'll be helping students by conducting more such webinars And so please sign up to the Zolve link, which I've circulated in the chat, and you'll be informed towards all the webinars which we'll be conducting in future, be it visa webinars, be it webinars related to your resume preparation, or how to search internships and all of that. So I think we are almost at the top of the hour. So we will just take 1-2 last questions, and questions are still flowing in. So I would strongly suggest to put it in the feedback form, which we have circulated, so that in the next webinar, we will start with those questions. One of the questions which people have mentioned is, okay, if we show the Harika ji has asked this question, that if we show the savings account of our mother, will they ask about the occupation? My mother is a housewife. Do we need to show any proof of it?
Okay. To start with, the answer is no. They're not looking at like, what is your mother doing and all that stuff. However, if you heard my entire conversation, I said when you go in for your visa interview, it is important that you carry documents from your family, right? From your parents and your mother as well. If your father is working, if he's into business, carry his papers as well and your mother's documents as well. How do you frame an answer? How do you fund yourself? The answer is that my family is going to fund me, not that my mother is going to fund me, right? Or my father is going to fund me. Always start your answer by saying that my family is going to fund me. Okay? So how will you fund me? So my family is going to take care of my expenses. My father's into business, We have savings and investments of rupees so much. We have properties worth so much. And in addition to this, I've taken an education loan. So you have to frame an answer. There's a sequence. There's a proper sequence how to answer the question. Like I said, probably the next session, it is going to be more about how to frame answers and how to crack the visa interview.
That is right. One last question, and the last question of the session is from NB. He has posted it multiple times.
Okay.
He has asked that I have completed my bachelor's in 2014 and I have done multiple jobs not in the same line. One is in construction field, another in management, another in software engineer. So he's basically changed quite a few lines. What are certificates do I need to take, and how can I put this forward to the visa officer?
Well, NB, first thing is like, I'm not sure what kind of a program are you going to go and study in the US. If it's a management program, this is fantastic, right? I mean, for a person who's going for an MBA, the kind of experience that you have is phenomenal, right? So once again, if you have strength, if you have exposure to different fields, and if you're going for a management program, this is wonderful to put forth, right? So that's one thing. And you've also asked like, what are the kind of documents that I need to carry? Well, if you had multiple jobs, starting from the current one, you have to carry your current salary slips for the last 3 months, then your joining letter. From prior to this, all your relieving letters that you have, right? Once again, I need to understand what program you're going for your studies. If it's for operations, right? And if it's for HR, this is wonderful. Why do you want to go to the US?